This is the cover of Del Resto Echoes, Travis and Beyonce song. Zoom in and you'll see an ad on the first page of the paper that reads, Betty Black Tour Sold Out. On page 14. The ad is 25 characters. 1, 14, 25. Also notice how this photo of the papers lays on grass that is similar to the grass of the football field that we see in all of the promotions of the Beyonce Bowl, making these two even more cryptically connected. On the other page, you can see that you'll win tickets. The Echo paper premiered on the Renaissance World Tour over 2 months before Del Resto Echoes came out, to which it was the cover, so we know that this paper holds Easter eggs. This is Beyonce dressed as Betty Davis for Halloween this year. She captions it, Betty Davis in my bones. This is Beyonce shouting out Betty Davis in the Queen's remix with Madonna that blends Break My Soul and Madonna's Vogue. This is Madonna's original Vogue where she shouts out another Betty Davis, known as one of the greatest actresses in Hollywood history. This is the African-American folk song Black Betty, recorded by American folk blues singer and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee Lead Belly. So what does all this mean, and who is Betty Black? I want to focus on Betty Davis here because like Linda Martell, I believe she's a huge inspiration for Beyonce, and she wants people to know her for a reason. Betty Davis was largely overlooked in her lifetime, and her boldness was a major reason why. As a pioneering funk and rock artist in the 1970s, she pushed boundaries with her unapologetically raw lyrics, provocative stage presence, and sexually liberated persona, which were far ahead of their time. This was especially controversial for a black woman in an era when society expected women, particularly black women, to conform to narrow standards of respectability. Critics and audiences often labeled her as too raunchy or vulgar, ignoring her artistry and innovation. The music industry also wasn't ready to support someone as uncompromising as Betty Davis. Many radio stations refused to play her music, and record labels struggled to market her. This lack of support limited her commercial success. Betty Davis especially faced backlash from her own people. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, also known as the NAACP, criticized her provocative image and accused her of perpetuating what they perceived as negative stereotypes about black women. At the time, the organization was heavily invested in promoting a more respectable image of black Americans to combat systemic racism and uplift the community. They believed Davis's unapologetic embrace of sexual liberation and bold stage persona reinforced hypersexualized stereotypes of black women, a harmful trope often used to justify racism and misogyny. While her contemporaries, Mick Jagger, George Clinton, and David Bowie, could be provocative without similar scrutiny, black women like Betty faced harsher criticism for stepping outside of the traditional societal norms, while her white male contemporaries were able to express themselves freely and be embraced by it, eventually being canonized in the halls of history as music's legends. Meanwhile, Betty Davis is not remembered. True to her character, though, Betty refused to tone down her artistry or conform to expectations of respectability. She viewed her work as empowering and liberating, creating space for black women to embrace their full humanity, including their sexuality, on their terms. The controversy with the NAACP, combined with criticism from other segments of the black community, added to the challenges she faced in achieving widespread success. It also contributed to her being misunderstood and marginalized during her prime. The church, as a cornerstone of the black community, often preached restraint and purity, making Betty's liberated image seem rebellious or immoral. This resistance contributed to her marginalization and lack of mainstream success during her career, even though her music was groundbreaking and influential. I can't help but think of Beyonce's Church Girl. Both Betty Davis and Beyonce's Church Girl explore conflicts between embracing sexuality and defying societal norms, especially those related to black womanhood and the church's moral expectations. After releasing 3 iconic albums, Betty stepped away from the music industry in the 1970s. Her retreat from the spotlight contributed her to being overlooked for decades. Beyonce paying homage to Betty Davis in the Queen's remix and her Halloween costume this year, with the caption Betty Davis in my bones, highlights Betty as a trailblazer who paved the way for artists like Beyonce to be accepted. Interestingly, the names Betty Davis with an E and Betty Davis with a Y don't only draw parallel in their pronunciations, but their attitudes as women. Both were fiercely outspoken, but their boldness was received very differently. Betty Davis, despite her controversies and battles with Hollywood standards, became one of the most celebrated actresses of all time, with enduring acclaim and multiple awards, including the coveted Oscar for Best Actress. In contrast, Betty Davis, with a Y, her sexual liberation and music and image were met with societal backlash, leading to her marginalization and decades of obscurity. Could this be Beyonce saying that she is embracing the black Betty, not the white one? It reminds me a lot of how Post Malone, who's from New York and has no historical affiliation with country music, forayed into the genre with his album F1 Trillion and was met with critical acclaim, including 4 CMA nominations for his song I Had Some Help. Meanwhile, Cowboy Carter, by a black Texan woman with deep Southern roots, was nominated for none and fiercely rejected by the country music community. Though I believe Beyonce is a genuine fan of Post Malone, and of course he of her, I mean, can we take a minute to talk about how he was looking at her during the Levi's jeans performance at the Beyonce Bowl? I think it's poignant that she chose to bring him out for the Beyonce Bowl to perform Cowboy Carter for the first time. He is a guest in her house, yet he gets the support from the country music audience even though he has no country roots, because he is a white man, which leads me into the song Black Betty. The song Black Betty has a complex history rooted in oral traditions. Originally sung by enslaved African Americans, it is thought to have served as a work song or field holler. The earliest known recordings of the songs were made in 1933 by folklorists John and Alan Lomax, who captured it during their efforts to document folk music in the American South.
Black Betty, bam-a-lam. Oh, Black Betty, bam-a-lam.
The Lomaxes recorded James Ironhead Baker and his fellow prisoners singing the song at a Texas penitentiary, preserving its raw rhythmic power. In the following years, the song was popularized further by blues musician Lead Belly, real name Huddy Ledbetter, who adapted and performed it in his signature style.
Oh, Black Betty, bam-a-lam, oh, Black Betty, bam-a-lam, oh, big Black Betty, bam-a-lam.
And he is an inductee of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Leadbelly's version of Black Betty added his own flair to the traditional melody, bringing the song wider recognition and highlighted its origins in African American musical traditions, maintaining its historical significance as a reflection of the resilience and creativity of those who first sang it under oppressive circumstances. However, the most mainstream version of Black Betty is the 1977 hit by the white rock band Ram Jam, which brought the song to a broader audience. This version, with a hard rock riff and energetic performance, became a commercial success. To this day, it is still their biggest song. This overshadowed the song's deep cultural roots, because sadly, the mainstream adaptation did not acknowledge or remember the original creators of the song, the African American slaves who sang it as a work song, and the folk musicians like Lead Belly who helped preserve it. Ram Jam did not appear to publicly acknowledge Lead Belly or those prisoners as the original artists in their mainstream success with the track, and there was little to no mention of his deep roots in the African-American folk music tradition. This is a common issue in the music industry, where black artists' contributions are often overshadowed or erased when their music is reinterpreted by white artists and brought into mainstream culture. Interestingly, the term Black Betty is known to have been a nickname given to a number of objects, including a bottle of whiskey, of course thinking of Sir Davis, a whip, a penitentiary transfer wagon, and in more modern song references, a Black Betty can allude to a fast car or a motorcycle. We see Beyonce dressed as Betty Davis on the cover of her album This Is It, where she's perched on top of a motorcycle. This reminded me of the photo of Beyonce on top of a motorcycle in her 2022 Vogue shoot. Could this all be connected to whatever is happening on January 14th? Given that Beyonce is incredibly intentional, teasing the Echo paper months before the release of her and Travis Scott's song Del Resto Echoes, it seems unlikely that the prominent placement of the Black Betty tour on the front page and the cryptic page 14 reference, with 25 characters aligning to 1:14:25, is coincidental. I have a theory that January 14th is going to be a blend of something with Act 2 going into Act 3. I'm not sure if the visuals will come in the form of a film until after all 3 acts are released, though I am still convinced there will be a film. Given that Beyonce is on a horse in a football field for this teaser, it's visually linked to the Beyonce Bowl teasers. I think potentially it could be a documentary on Netflix where Beyonce is thanking the artists who paved the way for her in country music and sharing the history of black cowboys. Or maybe it could be a select few shows called Beyonce and the Rodeo Chitlin' Circuit, as she owns many trademarks with this name. I just strongly feel that we will getting something and then ushering in Act 3 or a tour. I do think Act 3 will be rock and funk influence, featuring people like Chuck Berry, Prince, and Betty Davis, much like Linda Martell, Dolly Parton, and Willie Nelson were featured throughout Cowboy Carter. Prince passed in 2016, Chuck Berry in 2017, and Davis in 2022, but given the fact that Beyonce recorded Thick 10 years before Renaissance came out, which was confirmed by the producer The Dream, I have no doubt that she has recordings with these legends in her vault. The narrative of Black Betty, or Betty Black, ties directly to the broader pattern of cultural erasure in American music history. What happened in country music, where black pioneers were pushed aside, mirrored what happened in rock music, and this is why I do strongly believe that Act 3 will have a rock influence, given her homages to Betty Davis and Prince. The visionary talents of artists like Betty Davis was denied and marginalized because she defied societal expectations for black women at the time. Meanwhile, her male counterparts are cemented in the books of rock and roll history. This is something Beyonce is still fighting for to this very day. But the thing is, Beyonce is bigger than any CMA's performance. She is bigger than all of that, and she is creating her own lane and does not need to fit into the systems that were built on racism, like the CMAs. Given the fact that going down the rabbit hole of Black Betty has taught me more about the problem America has with the erasing of black history, makes me think that whatever the Black Betty tour is, it's going to be continuing the theme of reclamation. That's all I have for you now. Until next time, thanks for watching, Lore Breakers.